Welcome to U.S. Civil War History, a channel where we explore the strange, forgotten, and often mysterious stories of the American Civil War. If you stay with me until the end of the story, you will see how a single winter briefly overturned strategy, technology, and control in ways no general could have planned. At dawn, the Mississippi River was silent. There was no churn of paddle wheels, no low thunder of steam engines, no drifting barges moving south with the current. The river that usually breathed and moved like a living thing lay still, sealed beneath a hard skin of ice. Soldiers stepped to the bank and stared. Some tested it with rifle butts. Others walked out cautiously, boots scraping across frozen water that should have swallowed them whole. The Mississippi, wide, brown, and unstoppable, had stopped. For a brief moment in the winter of the Civil War, the most powerful river in North America became something else entirely. Not a highway, not a barrier, but ground. The Mississippi River was the backbone of the war in the West. It carried food from farms, troops from camps, coal for engines, and cotton that paid for weapons. Control of the river meant control of movement, supply, and communication across half a continent. Union planners understood this early. Their strategy aimed to choke the Confederacy by sealing off the Mississippi, cutting the southern states in two. Confederate leaders knew it as well. As long as the river flowed freely, they could still move men and material between east and west. Every fort, every gunboat, every campaign along its banks existed for one reason: to command the water. The war followed the river because the war depended on it. No one expected the river to freeze. Winters were cold, but the Mississippi was massive and restless. Ice usually broke apart before it could settle. Commanders assumed steamboats would keep running. Supply schedules were written as if the water would always move. Then the cold deepened. Temperatures dropped and stayed there. Ice floes thickened and collided. Pilots reported sluggish movement, then impassable stretches. Barges stalled midstream. Crews hacked at ice with axes, believing it temporary. But the cold did not break. It tightened its grip. The change came quietly. Overnight, the ice stopped shifting. By morning, it had fused into a single, unbroken sheet. In places, the Mississippi froze from bank to bank. Men walked where ships had sailed. Wagons were tested, then artillery. The river held. What had once divided armies now connected them. Patrols crossed without boats. Messages traveled straight across instead of miles downstream to a ferry. Naval guns, designed to dominate the water, suddenly pointed at empty ice. The river had erased itself as a defense, and no plan had accounted for that. The frozen river did not remain empty for long. Scouts moved first, then pickets. Soon, armed men stood where only currents had been days before. The ice became a place of observation, of movement, and of risk. Footsteps echoed across a surface that could crack without warning. Confederate units crossed into positions that had been protected by water. Union troops did the same. The Mississippi, once a clear boundary, turned into contested ground. Gunboats sat idle at the banks, their advantage stripped away. Rifles and field guns now mattered more than naval power. For the first time, the river itself became a battlefield. If stories like this help you see the war differently, consider subscribing. It helps keep these forgotten moments alive. Supply systems built around water transport collapsed almost overnight. Steamboats were frozen in place, coal barges trapped in ice, and warehouses left waiting for deliveries that never arrived. Rations ran short. Firewood became as valuable as ammunition. Both armies improvised. Wagons and sleds replaced boats. Men hauled crates by hand across the ice, racing against the threat of thaw. Civilian river towns suffered alongside the soldiers, cut off from trade and heating fuel. What had once been the fastest supply route in the war became the slowest. Officers faced choices they had never trained for. Some saw opportunity. Frozen crossings allowed surprise movements and temporary advantages. Others hesitated, knowing that one warm day could erase an entire plan. Orders were written with uncertainty. Marches were timed not to the enemy, but to the weather. Every decision carried the same question: would the ice hold? In many cases, nature made the final call. Plans failed or succeeded not because of leadership, But because of temperature, the thaw came suddenly. Cracks appeared first, thin and sharp. Then water pooled on the surface. Ice that had held cannons began to shift and break apart. Men scrambled back to the banks. Equipment was abandoned. Some did not make it across in time. Wagons slipped into freezing water, and horses vanished beneath the surface. Within days, the Mississippi flowed again. The crossings were gone. The moment had passed. The river reclaimed its role, leaving behind broken ice and a hard lesson neither side would forget. When the river opened again, the war resumed its familiar shape. The Mississippi returned to being a barrier, a highway, and a prize. But the freeze left its mark on both sides. Commanders no longer trusted the river to behave as it always had. Weather reports gained new importance. Timetables became cautious. For the Union, the episode reinforced a hard lesson. Temporary control meant nothing. Only permanent possession of the river could secure the West. In the month that followed, operations along the Mississippi grew more aggressive, more deliberate, and less willing to wait. The river would not be allowed another chance to decide the war on its own. The Civil War is remembered for its battles, its leaders, and its bloodshed. But for a short time, none of that mattered. The Mississippi froze, and strategy collapsed. Technology failed. Plans dissolved. Men walked across what had once defined the limits of the war. Then the ice broke, and everything returned to motion, except the certainty that humans were in control. The river flowed south again, carrying away shattered ice and a quiet reminder. If this moment stood out to you, let me know in the comments what surprised you most. In war, even the greatest armies answer to forces they cannot command.